Boom!
Greetings, and welcome to Skylanders Portalcasters, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything Skylanders. I am your host, GFDitto, and I am joined today by co-host Inklander, and in today's episode, we are going to be discussing the greatest Flynn moments. So how are you doing today, Inklander?
Doing pretty well. I'm pretty excited about this. Should be a lot of fun. And yeah, while we pretty much are going to be calling this episode Best Flynn Moments, it's really the best Flynn quotes. Like, let's be real.
Well, that's because all of his greatest moments are where he had a quote that was really memorable.
That's very true. Yeah, it's just whenever he interacts with one of the characters, it's really funny and typically tends to have this really zany, silly response to it. So it should be a lot of fun to discuss this.
And it does help that, the story scrolls in Skylanders Trap Team were all devoted to Flynn talking about himself.
Oh yeah. So there's some interesting quotes in here.
Oh yes. Where should we begin?
I think maybe let's try to start off with, Spyra's adventure and work our way forward. He's not really present pretty much at all in Imaginators, and he doesn't really have anything memorable from Imaginators.
Except that you can take a selfie with him, of course.
That's true, and that definitely fits his personality, but other than that, that's pretty much all he's there for. He's also in, the Undead Sensei realm, I think, but even then, that's really brief. They really only got him to record, 5 new lines for Imaginators, because, I guess they were on a budget. So he's not really in that. He's not even at the end. He doesn't even say boom at the end of Imaginators, which is it's so disappointing.
Right. Imaginators did lack the boom.
It did, which that's actually a moment that I really like. I like how at the end of Giants, at the end of Swap Force, at the end of Trap Team, and at the end of Superchargers, with Superchargers, he does that with everyone. They all join into this one boom moment, but I really like those. I just think it's it just became such a, Skylanders trope for them to just, end the game with Flynn being like, boom! And then typically after that, it just transitions to, you've done it, Portal Master! And it just, Elon does the outro. But, otherwise, that last, actual, moment is with Flynn there doing boom. And, I don't know, that's pretty memorable,
Honestly, I feel like any time Flynn has ever said boom is an amazing moment.
Although I think there's one time, though, that Buzz is don't get too excited there, Flynn. And then Flynn's like, oh, I'm sorry. That boom is retracted.
Yes.
I think that's in Trap Team. I don't remember where, but there's some time in that where he's like, don't get too excited yet, and he's like, oh, I am sorry, I will retract the boom, and that even then that's funny.
Exactly. It's a great moment.
It's very great. So yeah, and now I don't really think Flynn has too many great or memorable moments in Spyra's adventure, but I do think it's kind of funny how he's piloting that hot air balloon, and there's a couple times at the beginning of the game where he just keeps bumping into things at the hub, and he's like, you see that? I meant to do that. That takes a lot of hardcore training and precision to pull that off.
Right.
It was oh my. And he does that a couple times throughout the game. And it's just all right, Flynn. And then I really love his interactions with Cali, which I've talked about that in the last episode, but I really like the interactions that he has with Cali in this, because he's very much very forward and upfront, and she's just I am not dealing with this.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah, she's just no, I'm not putting up with this nonsense. But other than that, I really don't think there's anything too memorable from Spyra's adventure.
Not really.
Yeah, it's just that, back and forth relationship with, Cali and Flynn that really kind of sells that.
Yeah.
He thinks he's the greatest, he has this huge ego, and she's just I am not interested. Please go away.
Well, just like pretty much everything else in Spyra's adventure, Flynn's character was barely being developed at that point in time. So the greater moments would come later on when he's a more established and developed character.
Yeah, and I think we'd even start seeing that in Giants as well.
Yes, we start seeing it immediately in Giants.
Yes, because, of course, I think one of the best decisions they made with Flynn was getting rid of the hot air balloon and replacing it with the dread yacht.
The funny thing is, I think him in the hot air balloon, honestly, was a shout out to Spyra 1.
Okay, I could see that, yeah. But the dread yacht, though, that was a great decision. The game pretty much starts off with them at the old hub, at the core light. And he's just like, look at this, I got a great deal on this. And like, as he's saying this, like, smoke starts coming out of it and it's all falling apart.
Oh, yes.
And he's like, the guy seemed really eager to sell it to me, too. And Callie's like, oh my gosh, Flynn.
I feel like it's really interesting that Flynn has been claiming he's the world's greatest pilot, or the greatest pilot in Skylands since, like, the very beginning, but he also didn't have his own ship until the beginning of Giants.
Yeah, it's just, that was a weird choice, actually.
Later on in Swap Force, they would make a reference back to the hot air balloon in the Tower of Time, and Flynn actually, not implies, but flat out says he could do a barrel roll in that hot air balloon.
Oh, yeah. True. And that is really played up with the meditations on Boom as well and Trap Team. Just like all these things that he says he can do is just absolutely hilarious. But I also feel like they play up Flynn's personality a little bit more in Giants as well. I really do appreciate his interactions with Bowers from Cutthroat Carnival. Kind of also at the beginning in like Junkyard Isles as well. Like Flynn's kind of like played up as this character who will like scam people. he's just like, he will like take what he needs and run. So that's kind of fun that they played him up as this like heroic outlaw kind of figure in a way. Like he's like trying to do the right things and like he's trying to fight chaos, and before the Skylanders arrived he was like the force against chaos,
which we will be touching on again later because he had a comment about that in Trap Team.
Yeah, but that's kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting how he's like, yeah, like he's totally like scamming people out of things like money and whatnot, and yet like he was also at one point Skyland's only hope. It's hilarious. So we do get a little bit more of that in Giants.
Yeah, we do. His character started to really take off in Giants.
Yeah. I also like how in Giants he has that one line where he says we're going to need a bigger boat because they're going to go try to find Ermit's Archean robot, and he's like, oh, all right, we're picking up a robot, we're gonna need a bigger boat. I like that. That's kind of a funny reference to Jaws. It's just like such a random thing that they threw in there, but why not?
And then the Dread Yacht itself was an iconic vehicle in the Skylanders universe all the way through Trap Team.
Yeah, sadly the Dread Yacht does kind of just get forgotten about completely. So that's a thing. But I also really kind of like what they do with it in Swap Force as well. I think having some interactions with the Dread Yacht makes Swap Force interesting. For only really the beginning and end of the game does he have the Dread Yacht.
That's true.
So I think that makes it interesting.
But we see it all throughout.
True, we see it slowly getting built, and I do like that. But also I kind of like how he's pretty much forced to have to travel around with Tessa and Whiskers.
Yes.
While he doesn't like Whiskers, he really enjoys the attention he gets from Tessa.
And that's very evident.
Yeah, very quickly, because, like, one, I really like the Swap Force intro cutscene. It's very, like, to the point. Like, Callie almost admits that, like, she likes Flynn. Flynn's like, well, you're missing me, right? And she's like, well, I hate to admit it, but... And then she gets completely cut off by all the craziness that's happening in the Cloudbreak Islands. Like, so we never get to hear her response. So I kind of like how they leave that open-ended. But then we also get immediately introduced to Tessa, and Tessa's, like, being chased by a bunch of Greebles. And she's like, hey, head into the volcano. And Flynn's like, well, okay, sure. Like, I like adventure and whatnot. And so this is just like the way that we get introduced to all this. So I really like that. And once they like crash land pretty much, and like I think there's this part where like Flynn stands up and like there's this like shining light and there's this angelic music, and then he like cracks a smile and it has like that like sparkle on his teeth, and like Tessa just like looks up at him and is like, kerblam. It's like, oh my word. They basically like really set her up in the beginning part of Swap Force as like this fangirl for Flynn, which kind of makes it an interesting dynamic and completely different from Callie. Because like Callie really doesn't like interacting with Flynn. Like She likes Flynn. She definitely doesn't have feelings for Flynn, but, like, she enjoys his company, but she doesn't like admitting it. Meanwhile, with Tessa, we get a completely different dynamic.
Absolutely.
That's always interesting. So the fact that she basically fangirls over him for the first part of Swap Force is kind of funny, because she's like, oh my gosh, you know the Skylanders, you're the greatest pilot. Little did she know.
I would say he's the most iconic pilot in Skylands.
That I would agree with. Best pilot, maybe not. We see how he deals with Sharpfin's vehicle.
I feel like Eruptor from the Skylanders Academy TV series was a better pilot than Flynn.
I love Flynn's, like, comments towards Whiskers. It's very much just like, he's just like squawking feather mattress, and it's just
he
like...
hates that bird.
Yeah, he really doesn't like Whiskers. He really prefers his Dread Yacht. He likes to be in control, and it's quite funny. And we have this whole, like, situation later on with Ironjaw Gulch, where, Tessa has that line where it's like, if where you are is where you're supposed to be, then you're never really lost. And then also, Flynn has that whole line with Whiskers where it's like, ignoring my instincts is the only reason why I'm getting on this bird anyway. And then later on, he has that whole line where he's like, well, I just call all this, like, cool suave stuff that I do Flynn stinks.
Oh my god. It's great.
He's really just hyping himself up. He's really making himself look good. And I think at that point during that cutscene, I think Tessa has a little bit of, like, a wake-up call. She's like, oh, alright, so this guy, like, accidentally does things that end up working, and he's taking credit for it, and it's like the illusion starts breaking for her a little bit here, because now she's just like, oh my gosh, all right, this guy's not as cracked up as he's supposed to be, but, like, they still have the good banter and this friendship going on, so I think it works.
It definitely works.
Yes. And of course, there's that line, they'll never expect the monkey. They never do. It's really, really a good line.
It really is.
Then I also really like what they do with the Dread Yacht at the end of Swap Force. It's already been, like, upgraded and everything, and Sharpfin is, like, mentioning how there's, like, a spy mode, so they turn spy mode on, and then it apparently also has a hot tub, and Flynn's like, what in the world? How did you know all this stuff? And Sharpfin's like, it's in the manual. And Flynn's like, there's a manual?
Yes, that moment of shock, like, I own a vehicle that has a manual.
Oh my, like, that's so surprising. I also really like Flynn's relationship with Buzz and how that changes throughout Trap Team. Because, yeah, at the beginning of Trap Team, he's, like, really jealous of Buzz, which is also kind of funny because, like, Buzz just appears out of nowhere, so I think it works even better.
Right.
Flynn's just like, who is this guy? Who does he think he is with these secret ninja tomato skills? And it's really funny to see how he, like, clashes with him in Know-It-All Island. He's like, where is Buzz anyway? He's supposed to be here, and he can't even show up. And here he is bragging about his ninja skills, and then he, like, jump scares Flynn.
Oh yes, I forgot about the jump scare.
Yeah, it just absolutely freaks out Flynn, and he, like, screams at the top of his lungs. So I really like that. And eventually he warms up to Flynn by the end of Trap Team. I think he starts trusting him a little bit more. And then there's also that really great line from Phoenix Sanctuary as well when he sees Tessa again.
When he re-encounters Tessa in Phoenix Sanctuary, and he says, that's right, Tessa, wherever danger lurks, you're sure to find heroes like us. And since there are no other heroes like us, it's just going to be us. And that's an amazing line.
It is. Like, it's one of those lines that sounds, like, very epic, and it seems like he's going somewhere, and then at the end it just falls off. I think it's one of my favorite Flynn lines. Because it's just so silly, but it just works really well.
It really does.
Yeah, and this is also the start of Tessa just randomly leaving Woodboro for pretty much no good reason, because she's like, I figured I needed to protect the Phoenix chicken, but of course the Skylanders would be here. It's like, well, if you knew the Skylanders were going to be here, Tessa, why did you feel like you needed to leave Woodboro?
Right.
That kind of just becomes a running trope once you think about it. It's just like, Tessa is supposed to be the chiefess of Woodboro, and yet she never is in Woodboro ever again.
That's because she wants to spend her time with Flynn.
Exactly right, that must be it. But of course, another thing that we have talked about a little bit, but we definitely need to go in depth on, since it is Trap Team that we're talking about now, we might as well talk about the story scrolls.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh, are there a lot of good one-liners for the story scrolls.
Like, the first story scroll you come across is, of course, in Soda Springs, and it reads, the name Flynn comes from the ancient Archean word for awesome. In fact, Archeans have over 100 words for awesome, and all of them are Flynn. Like, what?
It literally makes no sense, but that's what makes it so wonderful.
It's very Flynn.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And by that I don't mean to say awesome, except that I do.
Oh yeah, and that just keeps going. Like, there's so many of them that are also just that weird. Like the Know-It-All Island one, too.
Oh yes, the not only can I fly faster than the speed of light, but also the speed of dark. Not to mention the speed of sound, time, and yes, the abstract concept of love.
What are these?
What are you even trying to say here?
I know. It's just like there's so many good ones. Like, how many enchiladas can I eat in 1 hour? All of them.
I kinda did a spit take on that one. It was just so incredibly amazing and on point for Flynn.
All of these are pretty on point. It makes me wonder how they came up with these. Like, I feel like this had to have just been like the Toys for Bob employees sitting around during lunch or something, spitballing these. And which ones would make the best, like, one-liner quotes. And I think they did a really good job for so many of these.
Another favorite of mine is the one found in Monster Marsh. The only good thing to come out of that level, in my opinion, is the story scroll that reads, I bet I can read your mind right now. You're thinking, I wonder what he's going to say I'm thinking. See? I did it. Boom. That one, the boom really emphasizes the perfection that is that quote.
I agree. Like, then there's the one in the immediate following chapter where it's like, someone once asked me on my birthday if I wanted to make a wish. To this I responded, I don't make wishes. Wishes make me.
And it's like, oh my god, he is so full of himself. It's incredible.
He's so egotistical. Ayn Rand would be having a field day here. She'd be like, yes, I like this Flynn character. We should have more Flynn characters.
Feeding off of this ego comes the Mystic Mill story scroll, where it reads, I really thought it would be hard boiling down all my awesome qualities into these scrolls, but it turns out that I'm pretty awesome at that too.
I know, he's just fourth wall breaks.
Right.
It's just, oh my. And, like, they just keep going. Chapter 15, Sky Highlands. I actually hold the current Skylands airspeed record of infinity miles per hour, a record I plan on breaking very soon. Whoever at Toys for Bob came up with these, good job.
Right.
I don't know if this was Alex Ness who did the Story Trap team, but I feel like this had to have just been like a big brainstorm in the office.
And then the immediate following chapter, the story scroll continues to feed this ego. It reads, did you know that I've been voted the most handsome fellow in Skylands 5 years running? Oh, and coming second? That's right, a picture of me.
And then in chapter 18, we actually get to hear him kind of give a little bit more of his backstory, which is fun. Whether this is actually true or not, which, I mean, we've heard from other sources, like, there's been other things in Skylanders media that kind of confirms this, but, like, to what extent, we don't know. But it's, before the Skylanders returned, I used to have to take on Chaos all by myself. Those were some scary times. For him, I mean. How much of that's legit? How much of it's not? Like, the thing is one of the great things with Flynn is we have this, like, very flawed protagonist. Like, the thing is with Flynn, what makes him really exciting is that he's an unreliable narrator. He is this character who will always hype himself up and always make things seem way more dramatic. How much of that story scroll can we believe? Like, sure, I bet he probably did take on Chaos by himself, but, like, how much so? Like, how did those situations actually end up going for him?
That's a fair point, and it also reminds me of the character Boomy from The Legend of Korra, where he's always got these fantastical stories until you realize later on in the series that there's actually some element of truth to them. Then you have to question, like, okay, how much of this was accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I really like unreliable narrators. It makes me think of The Great Gatsby, for example. Good example of an unreliable narrator, because we have this guy who's kind of idealizing Gatsby and kind of writing that story from that perspective. And then we have even, like, another thing that I'm actually going to be talking about later and in a future segment of this episode, but I might as well bring it up here, is, like, you know, The Princess Bride. Like, that's told as a frame story of a grandfather telling a story to, you know, his grandson. And, like, there, like, that feels, you know, occasionally unreliable with some fourth wall breaks. And it's really fun. Like, unreliable narrators often make these stories a little bit more interesting. And having this idea of Flynn being this unreliable narrator of, oh yeah, I'm always going to be exaggerating things, I'm always going to be hyping things up. The way that I depict things isn't necessarily always going to be true. Really, really interesting, and it makes him a really fun character.
It really does. I'd like to point out the Lair of the Golden Queen story scroll, where it reads, "You ever heard the expression, if at first you don't succeed, you must not be Captain Flynn because he always succeeds?" Yeah, me too. I find this one really, really interesting because I genuinely think that Flynn genuinely believes he succeeds at everything he does.
That's true. It's never with the help of the Skylanders at all. It's always just him. He is the reason he succeeds, and him alone. And the Skylanders just happen to be there helping out.
Yeah. I honestly can't think of a point where we can genuinely say he failed. We can point out that he didn't do it alone. He's not the reason that the success was there. I can't pinpoint a singular moment where Flynn actually failed.
That's true.
And because he has that constant positivity, it makes it a lot more fun.
So yeah, that's very true. He just sees things the way that he wants to see them. So it makes him a really interesting, unreliable narrator, and it's absolutely wonderful.
And I think, honestly, it would have been really cool if they had returned to this one I'm about to mention right now, because this would have been an interesting reference to see exactly how accurate it might be. And this is the story scroll found in Sunscraper Spyra, and it reads, "I knew I was cut out to be a pilot when I was just a little kid and made my first paper airplane, which I then flew across Skylands. That airplane is still in service to this day." Honestly, if they had come back in Superchargers and referenced that, maybe you see off in the distance, oh hey, it's Flynn's old paper airplane. I feel like that would have just been incredible.
What if Flynn had been a playable character? What if he had been a supercharger? And then, the mods for the Dread Yacht or something had been paper airplane mods?
Oh my god.
That would have been perfect.
Right?
That's such a missed opportunity. I wish Flynn had become a Skylander at some point. I would have loved to have had a Flynn figure.
I agree wholeheartedly. And honestly, Superchargers would have been the time to get it done, because then I also never understood why the Dread Yacht wasn't one of the vehicles.
Yeah.
It would have been a perfect Sky vehicle. It was a massively missed opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like that's the case with a lot of the previous vehicles that they had in Skylands, because they already had a couple. We had Sharpton's Sky vehicle as well, which they could have used. If they really wanted to, they could have used an Archean Conquertron like they had in the Sky Highlands level and in Trap Team. That would have been hilarious to have as a Sky vehicle, so I feel like they could have done a lot of stuff with it, but no, they didn't. But yeah, especially the Dread Yacht. That's such a classic thing that they should have just had in there. They could have made that Stealth Elf's vehicle. I don't think anyone would have minded.
I feel like Flynn should have been a Skylander, though. It would have been better suited to be supercharged by Flynn.
Yeah, so I don't know how they would have worked that in. I feel like they would have had to have made Flynn an air element Skylander, which means that Stormblade would have had to have been cut. But then what they could have done is Stormblade was originally supposed to be the dark element anyway. So then they could have just moved Stormblade and then just bumped Nightfall.
Which would have been fine, because Nightfall's so forgettable.
Of course, this isn't, confirmable. This is something we would have to ask Vicarious Visions. But originally, Splat was supposed to be the dark element. But then they changed her to magic. And then they worked on Stormblade, who was supposed to be the dark element, who then they changed to air. And then it feels like Nightfall they just kind of threw together at the last minute. It kind of feels like, well, we need a dark character, here you go. Which, her design's fine, but it definitely isn't as strong as Splat or as Stormblade. So, yeah, honestly, they could have literally just kept Stormblade as, the dark element, and then made Flynn an air element.
Flynn could have also been a light element. Astroblast could have been dark. Would have been better than Nightfall.
Very true. Sadly, we never got Flynn as a figure. However, at least there are all the Flynn parts available in the Creation Crystal stuff, so you can technically make Flynn.
Except it will never be 100% because I don't believe any of the catchphrases end with boom.
Yeah, so I just wish that they'd given them an actual full figure. It's if they went to the trouble of allowing you to make Flynn, they should have just given you Flynn.
But then they would have had to have paid him to voice lines.
Very true, which, it doesn't seem like they could afford for Imaginators. But yeah, I wish, since they kind of knew that it was most likely going to be their last game, I really wish they would have given us figures of Glumshanks and Flynn and maybe of Cali and Tessa or something.
Right. I do feel like instead of sidelining all the NPCs, that would have been the way to go.
Exactly. If they really wanted to focus in on the Skylanders themselves, then make all the NPCs Skylanders. Easy solution. But I guess moving on from Trap Team into Superchargers, the pretty much final game where Flynn has any importance, I also think there's a lot of really memorable Flynn lines and Flynn moments. Like, of course, there's that intro in Motley Meadows where he's like, Skylanders of the Earth element are better in this zone. Or maybe it was taller.
That was a great line. And a great play on the way Master Eon usually introduces the strong element for each area.
Yeah. Like, this is the first time you hear it in this game. And they're all like, wait, something's supposed to be happening right now. And Flynn's like, okay, I got this.
Flynn most certainly did not have this.
I like that they went with Hugo, but it honestly would have kind of been funny if they had just stuck with Flynn, and they just had Flynn record a couple different variations of that, where it's like, Skylanders of the Dark element are
hungrier in this zone. Oh, that would have been flawless. That would have been perfection incarnate.
Yeah, that would have been great. Like, they could have just kept playing with that joke and I wouldn't have really minded at all. Meanwhile, I also really like Flynn trying to take control of the Rift Network at the beginning. Like, from Hugo, he, like, steals the remote and it just turns that whole, like, Rift Network into chaos. I really think that's really funny. How it's all just, like, a nice, smooth, like, rift to Skylands, and then like Flynn tries to take control. He's like, I got this, I'm a pilot, I know what I'm doing.
Pretty much anytime Flynn tries to do something, hilarity ensues.
Yep. And then of course, you know, there's that whole sequence where Master Eon introduces the Superchargers and he's like, this is a problem, you know, I've been taken captive. And then Hugo's like, oh no. And then Flynn's like, oh hey, don't worry about all that, Hugo, that Sky Eater thingy will probably eat us all first.
Right.
It's like such a Flynn line, and then Cali has to like butt in and be like, no, it's okay, Hugo, we're gonna figure this out. And then he also has some other funny lines, like, keep your eyes out for concessions, I'm feeling kind of snacky. When they get to Battle Brawl Island, it's like the Skylander has to go into an arena battle to fight this Spellpunk. And he's like, hey, make sure we find food. Food's important for this.
It's like, we need popcorn more than we need to defeat this gargantuan Spellpunk.
And it really plays off of Flynn's love for food. Like, throughout all the games, he just makes comments about enchiladas, and enchiladas being the best things ever.
And an island made out of cake?
Oh yes, and cake. There's even a track in Superchargers Racing that is, like, themed around, like, cake and Flynn and chocolate, isn't there?
I believe so, yes.
And I think that fits with his character as well.
And then when they're entering the Spellpunk library, and Flynn's realizing that the answer isn't just right in front of them, he's got that line, whoa, you mean we have to read all this stuff? Isn't there a movie version?
Yeah. And then later on, he's like, come on, Cali, it's just a bunch of stupid moldy books. It's the most boring quest ever. And then subsequently, he gets, like, trapped inside one of the books.
Which was the most Flynn thing that could have possibly happened.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, when they go for the Eye of the Ancients in Monstrous Isles, he has that whole line where, you know, like, Tessa's been really hyping this up of, like, this is going to be awful, this is going to be terrible. And then he sees that it's basically just a resort.
Yep, it's perfect.
Yes, and his reaction is, oh, you're right, this is terrible. Do you think they're keeping the Eye of the Ancients in the hot tub or the cabana? Absolutely hilarious. The sarcasm in his voice there is spectacular.
He really nailed that sarcasm.
Like, absolutely. That's another really amazing line.
And then there was the point where they were getting ready to try to destroy the Dark Rift engine. Flynn was just about to press that button and Chaos freezes him. And he's like, something's wrong with my boom finger.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious when they're trying to trap the darkness. He's trying to use the engine to be able to send the darkness back to where he came from, and he's like, uh-oh, like this catchphrase thing that I typically do isn't working.
Right. And normally, boom would have been the moment where he pressed the button and he won.
Like, he really expects, like, everything to just, like, fall on his lap. Like, he kind of expects, because the Skylanders are doing all the work, he just kind of expects that to be handed to him. Kind of interesting with his personality.
And when he's prevented from doing the boom, it's that moment of, wait, something's wrong with my boom finger.
And then, as they're all, like, floating in the air, like just kind of having to wait for the Skylander to face Chaos. Flynn is like, well, Callie, this is your last chance to confess your undying love for me. And she's like, I'm good. And then Glumshanks a couple seconds later says, me too.
This was even more flawless because that genuinely pretty much was the last chance. They only showed up for a couple lines in Imaginators. So there really wasn't a chance for that to happen there.
Exactly.
So genuinely, that was Callie's last chance to confess her undying love.
I know. We're never going to get to see like the end of that plot line unless there is a new game where they choose to roughly continue Skylanders the same way. We're never going to see Callie kind of like open up a little bit more to Flynn and like actually be like, yeah, like I care about you, you still annoy me, but like, we don't ever really get to see her like, oh no, accept Flynn. We never really get to like hear her say that to Flynn, and that's just kind of leaving that arc open now.
Right. And I just got sheer giggles out of the fact that Glumshanks piled on with it. It was perfectly executed.
Yes, I know. They did a really good job, I think, with lines and Trap Team and Superchargers for Flynn. Trap Team and Superchargers is where Flynn, like, really started to shine.
Well, because they spent Spyra's adventure basically creating his character and developing him into a whole character to begin with. Then Giants, his personality started to shine through. And then through his antics and interactions with Tessa in Swap Force, he kind of fully became the character he's supposed to be. So then fully flourished going into Trap Team and Superchargers. They had everything already set up. His character was already fleshed out, and they were just able to lay down the lines and run with it.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier this episode with the whole being an unreliable narrator thing that we don't always know how much of what Flynn says is accurate, especially in regards to him being the hero that fought Chaos until the Skylanders returned. But in the few times that Flynn and Chaos do have an interaction with each other, like, the reactions between the two of them, they seem like they've been longtime rivals.
Oh yeah, that's very true.
Like, the expressions on Chaos's face tell a little bit of the story of Flynn has been a pain in his side for a long, long time, and there's actually at least some truth to Flynn's story about what happened before.
That's true. That's true. It's just up to us as fans and as players to be able to figure out exactly how much of that story is true, how much of it's false. And while we do get hints of it every once in a while throughout different parts of the lore, like, it is really kind of up to us. It's like, what is Flynn telling us, and how much of it is actually true, and how much of it is just him exaggerating things. And it's really a lot of fun.
And that's one of the things that makes him one of the best characters in all of Skylanders, and why he was deserving of an entire episode just dedicated to him.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been really fun talking about it. And I look forward to the next two episodes where we really deep dive into Chaos and the relationships that Chaos has with the other NPCs in the game.
Now, we also touched on earlier how it was a missed opportunity that Flynn and the Dread Yacht were not available characters as Superchargers Skylanders, or even as Senseis in Imaginators. What we did get was a bunch of other characters that we had to go out and find. I think now it's time for us to go and try to find a bargain on some Skylanders. I'll see you over in the Legendary Treasure Hunt.
In this week's Legendary Treasure Hunt, we decided to switch things up a little bit. We decided to do something a little bit different for this one. So instead of trying to find a lot with the most Skylanders figures, or figures of a particular element, or, of a particular actual figure, like, Mysticat, like in a couple episodes ago, like, we decided to actually do accessories. So anything that's pretty much not included with the game. So we're not counting codes, we're not counting stickers that come with the characters, we're not counting the characters themselves, we're also not counting portals, and we're also not counting the games themselves. So in this episode, we're looking at anything that counts as an accessory. We're looking at McDonald's toys. We're looking at plushes. We're looking at carrying cases. We're looking at comic books. We're looking at anything that's Skylanders related that is not actually from the games themselves. The price limit for this episode is $50. With that, our typical scoring system is still going to be used. So we have 1 point for every Skylanders accessory that is featured in the lot. And then we have half a point for every $5 under the price limit you are with that lot. And also minus half a point for every Shroom Boom that happens to be in the lot. And as per usual, I do have the ability to award an extra bonus point if I think that lot goes above and beyond. So Ditto, where did you find your lot and what does it include?
I found my lot this week on OfferUp. It is listed at a total of $50, right on the nose. And it comes with the Skylanders Giants Starter Pack, which doesn't count towards the challenge, but it does have a Skylanders Giants poster.
Like it's one that's not included with the starter pack.
Yes. It has 2 carrying cases, the Swap Force carrying case and the Giants carrying case. It comes with a Skylanders Wii Remote and Nunchuck. The Nunchuck is designed around Magna Charge, and the Wii Remote is designed around Blast Zone. It includes 2 McDonald's toys, 1 Wallop and 1 Wolfgang, and a handful of Skylanders themselves. Tree Rex, Series 2 Double Trouble, Sprocket, Bouncer, Legendary Jetvac, Series 2 Chop Chop, Series 2 Sonic Boom, Jetvac, Series 2 Stump Smash, Series 2 Gill Grunt, Legendary Igniter, Legendary Slam Bam, Flashwing, 1 Shroom Boom, and a Dragonfire Cannon.
So you have a great lot, honestly. Like, you get the starter pack of Giants, you get some carrying cases to be able to help you build your collection, you get the portal, and you also get a decent amount of Skylanders, except for Shroom Boom. Shroom Boom's not decent, but the rest of them are good. So, you know, it's actually really good. You also get, like, a cool, like, Giants poster that has, like, that's cool. That's kind of included separately there. And, like, Happy Meal toys kind of thrown in. You don't really tend to see those included in lots very often at all. So that's kind of neat. If you're trying to collect all the McDonald's stuff that came out for Skylanders, you'd be able to get your hands on some of that there. So actually a pretty decent lot here. So included in your lot, you have the poster. You have the 2 Happy Meal toys. You have the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, both of which are Skylanders themed, and you have the 2 Skylanders carrying cases. So that brings your initial total up to 7, and you are right at the price limit of 50, so you don't get any extra points for that. But you do have a Shroom Boom in there, which has to knock you back half a point down to 6.5. But here's the thing, you have a really cool lot. This is a pretty good starter pack for anyone that wants to get into Skylanders. So honestly, I have to give you the bonus point here. Like, I really think that is cool. Like, you have a good variety of some Skylanders merch, and you also have a really good collection to start you off with Skylanders as well. So that would bring your grand total up to 7.5 points this week.
Well, thank you, Inklander.
Moving on to my lot, I found mine on eBay, listed at a price of $22.58. And my lot actually includes a set of Skylanders comics. So it includes 2 unopened micro comics. It includes a complete set of 4 Skylanders comics, including Biting Back, Full Blast, Gold Slinger, and Chopped. And then it also includes a variety of different Skylanders posters. It actually includes 4 different Skylanders posters. So my lot starts off with a total of 10 for the 4 complete set of comics, the 2 additional micro comics, and then the 4 posters, bringing my total up to 10. And I am $27 under the price limit, which gives me 2.5 points, which gives me a grand total of 12.5 points for this legendary treasure hunt. So it looks like I end up being the winner this week, but honestly, I think we both have 2 pretty cool lots, and they're both really different too.
Right.
Your lot is coming with a set of stuff to be able to get you started with the game, plus a couple collector's items for us Skylanders nerds, which is cool. And then if you're also a Skylanders nerd and you're looking for the comics, then and some posters to be able to put on your wall or something, then there's also my lot too, where you're able to get a set of the comics and some of the posters too. So that's actually kind of really cool. So both of ours are kind of going for different things here. Yours is definitely to be able to get you into the game, but here, if you want a little bit more on the comic book literature side, or maybe if you already have the game and you just want to try out the comics, then there's my lot. So both of these are actually really good deals and really cool.
Yeah, and I love that yours is more focused on the lore, while mine is more focused on the games. Because the lore isn't something... It's something we talk about a lot, but it's not something we really tend to search for too much.
Right, exactly. So this has actually been kind of a fun challenge to switch things up, and instead of looking for Skylanders, actually try to look for some merchandise. I think that this was kind of really cool to switch up how we're looking at these lots.
Absolutely.
With our lots in hand, it's time for us to go look for Flynn, and... it doesn't actually look like he's around the Dread Yacht this time. Instead, it looks like he's around a crowd of people telling a story about some of his adventures. I think it's time for us to go listen in and see what he's talking about.
As we approach Flynn and the crowd of people surrounding him, we hear him telling a tale of an adventure that he once had that caused the creation of a statue dedicated to him, the legendary Statue of Awesome. So in today's Dread Yacht destinations, we're not actually aboard the Dread Yacht this time. Our tour is going to be of the Nightmare Express DLC level for Skylanders Trap Team, where it is kind of based around Flynn telling a story of an adventure that he says he went on.
We had to go with a Flynn-centric level, and if, this is pretty much the Flynn-centric level. This one it's great. I actually really like this level a lot, because it's pretty much told almost like a frame story. It's almost Princess Bride-esque in that way, in which throughout this level, Flynn narrates things that happen, and it's actually pretty funny. It's really clever how they do this, because we kind of have Flynn as our guide throughout this level, but he just kind of pops in every now and then throughout the level, but his voice is kind of always there, which is cool. And so I really do appreciate that. I think it's a really fun thing, and it also brings back that idea of the unreliable narrator, literally in our faces, because Flint's telling us the story, and we have all these characters that are in this level, like Cali being like, oh, Flynn's the best, I love him, he's so cool. And it's like, okay, Flynn, are you exaggerating this? he has to be exaggerating this. There's no way that Cali would actually admit to that or say that. So it's it's kind of fun that we actually, he's pretty much unreliable in the way that he responds to people generally, but the fact that we actually get him narrating a level and acting as the unreliable narrator is actually wonderful, and it's a lot of fun.
It really is. And this level tells the tale, essentially, of Flyndiana Jones, as the Skylander basically goes on what would have been a Flyndiana Jones adventure.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So not only does it evoke Princess Bride vibes for me, it also really evokes Indiana Jones. They're very, I wouldn't even say that it's subtle. It's on the nose. I think, there's a reference to pretty much almost every single Indiana Jones movie except the fourth in here. We have the Trolley Grail, obviously supposed to be Holy Grail, supposed to be referencing Last Crusade. We also have that whole train sequence on the Nightmare Express at the end where you're having to go through all the cabins, you're having to climb up the crates. That's totally reminiscent of the train sequence from the beginning of Last Crusade with young Indiana Jones. And then we also have the Temple of Boom, which is very, very much supposed to be a reference to the Temple of Doom, the second Indiana Jones movie, which is actually a prequel. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people forget about that part. But it's a prequel to Raiders. And while we don't necessarily have, from what I saw, a direct Raiders reference here, we do have rolling the bombs throughout parts of this level, and that, while it's not reminiscent of Indiana being chased by the giant boulder specifically because you're pushing it, it still kind of feels like it's kind of stretching it to reference it. It would have been cool if we were actually chased by a giant boulder in this level though, but I still feel like it kind of works. So this level is very much supposed to be Indiana Jones, and it's really fun and really clever at how it was done.
It really is. This level is one of the funniest things I've seen in Skylanders in its entirety. if I'm being honest. And it's really fun to play through as well.
Yeah, there's even that sequence where, like, Flynn's trying to get the trolley grail, and he, like, manages to get it, and he's like, cool! And then he gets trapped, which is know what? That's probably the Raiders reference right there, is, like, the beginning of Raiders, where Indiana Jones is trying to, like, get the artifact, but he's also trying to put the right kind of weight on it, so there's not a trap that goes off, but then it does. Like, that's probably the Raiders reference. So, like, it's fun, it's funny, it's quippy, it's clever. There's also, like, a fourth wall break where, like, one of the Mabu responds to, like, disembodied Flynn, and Flynn's like, wait a second, he can hear me? What in the world? I love this level. And as a matter of fact, like, thinking about it, because we also discussed the Mirror Mystery, the other adventure level for a Trap Team that isn't one of the Light and Dark expansions, but there they also went kind of abstract with it being like an alternate dimension. So they went alternate dimension and frame story for both the DLC levels and Trap Team, and honestly, I really love that. I like that they decided to go a little out of the box and a little corny with both of them, because it really is just a lot of fun. Like, you can tell that they had really fun with both of those levels, and this one especially. Noodles comes back, which is weird. Like, yeah, like that I wasn't expecting. I actually forgot that happened. Frankly, I always associate Noodles with giants, but here we have him back. He's trying to get the trolley grail. It's really fun. Like, honestly, this is a pretty solid level. I just kind of wish at the end, like, Flynn had come in and said, like, my name's Flynn, you took my grail, prepare to die. Like, it would have been a fun Princess Bride reference, honestly. Because, like, that, like, not the, I think they were specifically directly going for Princess Bride here. They very much were going the Indiana Jones angle. But, like, the whole frame story idea, the way that it's told as, like, a story, it kind of would have been fun if they had included a little like Princess Bride nod in there, but it's just me. But overall, this was great. Like, the platforming's good, the puzzles are good. Like, there's a lot of different fun sequences. Like, the train sequence is fun. You're battling enemies, you're having to do some platforming, you're having to, like, have a section where you're having to do some puzzle solving with the bomb. There's a whole section in the temple where you're trying to release Flynn from the trap and having to dodge, like, spikes and traps inside the temple. Like, there's actually really good variety here.
The theming is amazing.
Yeah, like, it's really good.
Now that Flynn's ridiculous tale is over, not sure how much of it was true and how much of it was exaggerated, we're going to go ahead and board the Dread Yacht so that we can head over to the Archean Arena.
Here we are in the Archean Arena, where we pit Skylander against Skylander in a bout of hypothetical combat. Ditto, why don't you tell us which champion you've brought to the Archean Arena this week?
This week, I have brought with me to the arena a very unique Skylander. I have brought with me today the Skylander known as Aurora. Aurora is a melee light element Skylander with a maximum health at level 20 of 720, critical hit 95, armor 50, speed 80, and luck 31. Her attack 1 is called Double Sword Strike, which is a 6-hit combo in 3 moves that deals 49 points of damage per hit. Her attack 2 is called Flash Dash, which allows her to dash and flip through enemies, dealing 39 points of damage. And her attack 3 is called Light Burst, which drops a light sword that slows enemies and explodes for 98 points of damage. For upgrade paths, the top path is known as a Chemo Master, which adds combos, allows Aurora to enter Rapid Strike mode, so her attack 1 will strike numerous times, and increases her overall attack speed. Her bottom path is known as Fastest Skylander Alive, which allows for her to dash continuously, increases the damage of her attack 1, and allows for her to use Light Burst while dashing.
So, Aurora is a little terrifying, not just because of those initial stats, but that attack 3, and also even the attack 1, honestly, and then the fact that, again, Aurora is the fastest Skylander alive means that Aurora is going to be able to attack, dash, just over and over and over again, with the dash even dealing damage as well, like, this could rack up damage really quickly, especially with a critical hit of 95, a base speed of 80, and an armor of 50. This is concerning.
Yeah, Aurora is very underestimated, but amazing to play as.
That is very true. However, I do believe that Aurora is probably going to be able to take out quite easily poor Snapshot, specifically Dark Snapshot. So, Dark Snapshot is of the water element and is ranged and has a health of 1170, a critical hit of 56, armor of 29, speed of 65, and luck of 26. His attack 1 is Traptanium Arrow, which deals 35 damage and is just flinging arrows out in front of him. His attack 2 is Crystal Slam, where he basically kind of uses it almost as like a smasher weapon in a way, which deals 66 damage. And then his tertiary attack is Torrential Tide Pool, which summons forth a tide pool that he's able to control in front of him to take out enemies, and that deals 10 damage. His top path is Crackshot Croc, where attack 1 gains charge, the arrows explode, and the Traptanium shards splinter off arrows for additional damage. Meanwhile, his bottom path is Tide Turner, where attack 3 gains increased area and damage, it traps enemies, and calls forth the Kraken. Just wanted to make a Clash of the Titans reference now. Dark Snapshot, really fun character to play as, and he does have a pretty decent health here, but his highest initial stat is 65, and that's not really even a match for Aurora's whopping 80. Meanwhile, his attack 1 it's speedy and can definitely deal damage quickly, but, Aurora's attack 1 can deal more damage even more quickly. Crystal Slam is really good when it comes to damage because it's 66, but also at the same time, that's a decently slow attack here. And Torrential Tide Pool is not really useful in almost any situation ever. So, gotta be honest, it's not Snapshot's strong suit. No matter what, Snapshot's not really going to have too much to deal with Aurora's speed and with Aurora's massive amounts of damage. The health is going to help him slightly, but not much. I'm going to have to try to get her down pretty quickly before she's even able to get to me. But the thing is I don't have any traps I'm able to place down. I don't have anything to be able to delay her speed. I'm just going to have to try to run away and fire arrows. And I don't really think that's going to be a very effective strategy at all.
Definitely not, especially considering I'm going to absolutely capitalize on that speed. I'm going to be using the fastest Skylander alive path. I'm going to immediately just start dashing to close that distance, drop one of those light swords right on you as I first approach you, maybe come around for another hit or two, and then at some point, maybe 2 or 3 hits in, I'm going to stop, I'm going to smack you 6 times with my weapons real quick, and then I'm going to keep dashing.
Yeah, and you really only need to do that a couple times, and then Snapshot is dead.
Pretty much.
So, as much as I like Snapshot, and I've used multiple versions of him now, it seems like as much as I like him, he's not very good in any of these statistical, hypothetical situations here, so shame on you, Snapshot.
I'm sure he could beat Shroom Boom.
Probably, that's true, although he's a lot better than Shroom Boom, thank you very much.
That's fair.
I feel like he could beat, I don't know, Cinder. I bet he could beat Cinder pretty easily.
Probably.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at our list of Skylanders here. So he's not awful. He could probably beat Gilgrunt.
It just depends on your opponent and their playstyle.
That's true.
Snapshot is by no means a bad Skylander, but when matched up against an equally experienced Portal Master with a Skylander like Aurora, and just capitalizing on that speed, it's a lot harder to be able to say he stands a chance there.
So here, I just have to say that Aurora takes this by a long shot this week in the Archean Arena.
Every time. 100 times out of 100.
Oh yeah. 100 times out of 100, this would be going to Aurora.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. You'll find our website and our individual channels listed in the description. Follow our Twitter at SLPortalcasters for regular updates about the podcast, and join our Discord server for Skylanders discussions. Thank you for listening, and in the next episode, we will be discussing the best chaos moments and quotes. See you then.
Bye.
I feel like Eruptor from the Skylanders Academy TV series was a better pilot than Flynn.
What a burn. Burn. Because it's Eruptor. Puns. I'm sorry, that was unintentional, but true.
That was pun intended.
Well, pun not intended, but it worked out well, so I'll take it.